This is Made in America with Neil Asbury and Rich Rothman.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm so happy that you've joined us. Dr. Rich and I have an incredible show coming up for you today. Lots of wonderful discussion, wonderful guests, and my, oh my, Rich, how many topics? I mean, there's just so much to talk about. And but fortunately, there's some really wonderful things to talk about, Rich. And I know in the last, few weeks, I mean, it's not been nice. I mean, it's not been really great, talking about a lot of things that's going on in our country and how so divided we are and, what's happening really in the economy and, with regulation and inflation and, it just goes on and on and on and on. But Ohio this past week is the center of the universe. Well, it's certainly the center of the universe when it comes to job creation and attracting wonderful jobs and wonderful companies to the state. And some of the things they're doing there is just absolutely incredible, Rich. And I think we could all learn from Ohio. I think all 49 other states could very much learn from Ohio, Rich.
Well, yeah. And obviously Rush Limbaugh started his show with the song Ohio, which was one of my favorite songs anyway. So I'm just saying they're there, they're hip, things are happening. You know what it seems to me in understanding what we're going to talk about? Ohio appears to be in play right now. It's the flavor of the month.
Well, I mean, in many ways.
Seems that way to me.
Economically and also politically, some really, really incredible things going on there, too. Exciting things. Maybe we'll get a chance to talk about that as well with our first guest. We're very pleased to have with us today Jon Husted. He is the Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Ohio, which happens to be also my birthplace. I'm a Buckeye. Jon, it's really wonderful to have you with us today.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
So Intel is building an incredible facility, or facilities, I should say, just outside of Columbus, the state's capital, also where Ohio State is, and all the Buckeye fans originate, but although they're all over the world these days. And you're talking about 3,000 new jobs, high-paying jobs, which could be 4 to 5 times bigger, once this thing is built out. So, Jon, what can our other states learn from Ohio?
Well, it's a great question, and let me just describe the project so that your listeners know. It's America's effort. Intel is trying to lead America's effort to reshore the most important mass-produced piece of manufactured equipment, I think, that exists in the world, which is the semiconductor, the computer chips that are really important to 300 subsectors of the economy. So there are 300 subsectors of the economy that rely on this, and 75% of these chips are made in Asia, and 0% of the most high-tech chips are made in America. We only make about 10% of them, 10 to 12% overall. So America has to get in the game of reshoring this industry, and Intel has a strategy to do that, and Ohio won in the competition in the country to have located what their CEO, Pat Gelsinger, said is the largest, most advanced semiconductor production facility in the world. And they're going to start, we're going to hopefully break ground on that this summer. And, what you can learn is that America needs to make things again. The supply chain, inflation, all of those things, the pandemic, we all realize that we can't rely on countries in businesses or countries that are maybe not friendly to our interests, as Europe is realizing with Russia and Ukraine, maybe China and Taiwan eventually, that we, for our economic and national security, need to do this in America. And Ohio competed. We make things. We lost a lot of business back when globalization occurred and people thought we could build things cheaper abroad. We're realizing that there's a consequence for that. Companies are looking at reshoring that production, and Ohio was prepared for that opportunity. And really, we've just tried to create a great business environment, no drama, just saying, hey, you want to build things? We're a state that wants to help you do it. And a lot of other states, I think, are good and very competitive, and we win some, lose some. But there are a lot of states in this country right now that are not very friendly to that cause. And I think that we distinguished ourselves as somebody who wanted to be part of the solution.
Well, it is an outrageous success for the state. And not only is it important, and I think it's wonderful, congratulations on getting such a magnificent company to be there and develop their largest plant ever, which is just unbelievable. But you happen to have as you aptly described, one of the most, or if not the most important component that goes into anything that has technology going forward in the digital world. I mean, give you an example. We can't get cars right now because they don't have enough chips to produce the cars. Mercedes, for example, can't produce V8 engines. There are no AMG engines this year from Mercedes because they don't have enough chips. It takes 5 chips alone to facilitate the 8 cylinders. Then it takes 5 more chips to facilitate other things in the engine. It takes 5 chips to facilitate what goes in the dashboard for some of the new technology that they wanted to bring out this year in the S model, including things that would protect you when you open up your door. It would let you know that something's outside the door. It would not let your door open up and save yourself from, destroying your door. So if you think about it, you're going to be developing probably the most important product that can actually, if we had it today, it would help lift us out of this incredible, environment we're in where we can't get things produced. So I think it's great. How did this come about? This is marvelous.
Well, just to emphasize something on your point, you couldn't drive your car, you couldn't use your phone, we couldn't be having this conversation, you couldn't turn the lights on without semiconductors and computer chips.
And it's the common denominator in all products right now, going forward in the 21st century.
It's like the oxygen to the economy. You can't do 100%. Anything without it. And so we have to build them here. And Ohio recognized that. Immediately when we got the phone call, we just said, well, what do we got to do? Let's move heaven and earth to make this happen here, because we make things in Ohio, like cars and washing machines, refrigerators. I mean, things like that we can't build them. We've had plant shutdowns in the state because they didn't have chips. And so much of our economy in the state relies on access to this. We're also a big part of the national defense with Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and NASA Glenn, and all of these they all need chips. And so we recognize this immediately as something that's essential to everything else we do in this state. And we wanted to make sure that it happened here. And so we quickly rallied to build to supply a site. We are going to build the infrastructure around that site between roads and water treatment plants and things like that. They'll use 5 million gallons of water a day, so we've got that. A lot of other places don't have access to those kinds of natural resources. And we have the educational institutions where, we mentioned Ohio State University that has the capacity to provide the engineering talent. But it's all of those things together, and the fact that we wanted them. They're making a huge investment. And if you don't think that being a business-friendly state that is welcoming to manufacturing and all that goes with it matters, then you're wrong. If you want to win these things, you've got to be the right kind of business and regulatory environment. And that is not just policy, it's also attitude in wanting to help them be successful.
So, John, I got an observation and a question, I guess, and this could lead all kinds of places, but something that Intel did, right? I mean, they made a decision to come to Ohio, just outside of Columbus, but they didn't make a decision for the next 6 months or the next 2 years. They made a decision for a long time. I mean, to put the world's most advanced, largest semiconductor plant in Ohio, and all those wonderful things it's going to do to help our industry and our manufacturing sector, our entrepreneurs, our businesses, our small businesses, the jobs that it will create, absolutely amazing. But they made this commitment for many years, right? So they're looking at Ohio and saying Ohio is going to be a business-friendly place for years to come. What would you say about that?
Well, it's true. And you want to know what, and the fact of the matter is that 20 years ago we weren't. 20 years ago we had killed the goose that laid the golden egg by having policies that were very anti-competitive, but reform started on everything from workers' compensation to tax reform, to tort reform, all of those things, building an education system that really emphasized our vocational training and our community colleges, and really getting back to the fundamentals of creating a friendly place to do business. And all of those things over time have changed the state. We are not the same state we were 20 years ago. We're much more hungry. We're much more business friendly. We have a culture here now that is built around how do we help businesses be successful, because we know when they are successful, that means great high-paying jobs for the people of our state. Everybody wins. Businesses can compete in a global economy. People have jobs, higher wages. They get to buy a house and a car and save for their retirement or their kids' education. And it's a recognition that if you do these things, it's a tide that lifts all boats. And we all got to be in this together. The workforce has to be in, business has to be in, government has to be in.
John, we got to take a quick break. Can you stay with us for a few more minutes?
Sure.
Hey, folks, incredible discussion here with Dr. Rich and I. Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted from the great state of Ohio. Still a lot more to talk about. Ohio's going to be a very important state here in this next upcoming midterm and presidential election. Maybe we can talk about that. Let's get John's ideas. Stay with us. Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we are together with Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted of Ohio. Still a lot more to talk about with John. So, John, Dr. Rich and I have had Jim Jordan, Congressman Jordan, on our show multiple times, and just recently. What a great American. I love the guy, and he's so articulate, and he's so passionate, and he's just
sells a lot of white shirts. It's amazing. He goes on Fox or something, and the next thing you know, dozens of shirts go flying out of Neiman Marcus. It's unbelievable.
Roll up the sleeves too on them. If you're going to,
I love the guy. I love the guy. I love wrestlers anyway. My best friend going through college was a wrestler, and then we were both together working together. When we taught school a long time ago. And they have a great attitude. Don't mess with Lonnie and don't mess with the congressman. Great guys.
Tough guys. They know how to rumble.
Yeah.
But, hey, look, Ohio, time was when it was the proverbial swing state, and I guess it still is. But in the last cycle, Trump won there big. And also Florida wasn't that close either. Where we're broadcasting actually from today, and we're plugged in here and in South Florida into Washington, and we're talking to you in Ohio. Man, isn't that great technology?
Because we have chips.
Wonderful. Well, thank God this machine, I bought it some while ago, so it still works.
We have chips.
But hey, look, you have a really colorful Republican primary going on right now, and I'll tell you one thing that I'm absolutely enamored by, and I'm very thankful for. I mean, you got such a deep bench of talented people up there. You got a deep bench of talented people that, and you look at the Democrat side, I mean, essentially have one sort of broken candidate, and you look at the Republican side, and they got really great candidates. What's the sort of farm school for that? You guys got some really great people up there.
Well, look, I think when you are a swing state, you learn how to speak to different audiences. You have to,
good point.
It's not like it's not always just an easy layup for the Republican team when you're in a swing state. So you learn how to build coalitions of people together and figure out how to appeal to a broad variety of voters. As I always say, a majority is made up of many voices, and we have a lot of people who've learned to understand how to weave those coalitions of voters together. That and the Democrats at the national level have lurched so far left that they've made it a lot easier on us in terms of the national brand of Democrats. Ohio Democrats are not a liberal bunch. And so as the National Democratic Party has leaned more and more left and it seemed more and more out of touch with the average working class Democrat, I think that has also helped Republicans in Ohio by virtue of that.
Well, I just think it's remarkable. You know, one of the things I like about economic development is that it's the trickle down. It's the real number that is affected, and it's like a multiple of 3, could be multiple of 4, because it's not just the facility that's coming in and the thousands of jobs, 3,000 or 300, 3,300 jobs, but it's going to be the effect on the community and the jobs that are created to service that facility that's coming in. So everybody has a stake in it. Everybody has a stake in the value of what you're bringing to the state right there. Pardon the redundancy of the S, but right there. So it lifts everybody. John, it lifts everybody up.
It does. So every phase of this, there may be as many as 5 phases of this. Each phase is 20,000 jobs between direct intel jobs, supply chain jobs, and construction jobs. Okay, and people in the state get it. They get that when somebody has a good job making chips, they get paid. They go buy a car, they buy a house, they go to your restaurant. They go to your store. It has a way of creating virtuous cycles in your local economy, and the people of Ohio get that, and that's why this is so important.
John, my family is from Southern Ohio, Adams County, West Union. You know West Union. Not a lot of people know West Union, but it is the county seat.
I do.
You do know that. And down.
I know.
Down,
I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help Adams County get access to broadband so that they can. We have majority of people in your county, in that county, as you know, they don't even have access to the internet.
It's like one of the most rural counties in West Virginia, right? It is like one of the most rural.
Right on the border with Kentucky, down by the
exactly.
For people that don't know where that is. So.
Exactly, and you go a little bit east, and you're in Appalachia. But time was when that was a very conservative part of the state, and Republicans did well down there. But it seems like the Republicans are doing well all across the state right now.
Yeah, we Republicans are doing well right now, and look, it is a combination of a couple things. As I mentioned, we know we've learned how to pull working class folks into the conversation on economic development. As we've been sort of alluding to, that they get that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that this whole idea that as the Democrats have done, they sort of pandered to subsectors of society, right? This group and that group, and I think that as Republicans, we've just tried to say, look, this is America. We want to create a great place for anybody, no matter how you grew up, what your ethnicity is, what your background is. We want to create a meritocracy, and that's what we believe in. And I think that is a great appeal to the majority of Ohioans, no matter where they live.
Hey, John, man, it's been wonderful having you with us, man. You've just an incredible guest doing wonderful things up there. We love Ohio. Man, you're the heartland of America. You are the heart of America, and we really appreciate everything you do. Jon Husted, Lieutenant Governor from Ohio. John, come back and visit us real soon.
Would love to. Thanks for having me on as a guest.
Thank you. Coming up, we have Ken Davis, who is the former Deputy Attorney General of the great state of Virginia, Rich. And a lot to talk about there. I mean, Virginia also on the move. Stay with us.
Promoting American industry. This is Made in America with Neil Asbury and Rich Rothman.
Great big welcome. You're back on Made in America. This is Dr. Rich Rothman right here with Neil Asbury, the two of us today. And we are delighted to have you here. We have a great guest for you right now. And we're going to be talking to Ken Davis. Ken Davis is the former Deputy Attorney General for Virginia. Now, the minute I said Virginia, everybody's eyes just lit up, right, Neil? Because we know that was ground zero in the last election for the parents of this country to start a movement that took it back took the country back and gave the power back to the people, as opposed to the folks who thought they had the power because they forgot they work for us. We don't work for them. Ken Davis, welcome to Made in America.
Well, thanks so much, Neil and Rich. I'm delighted to be on this afternoon.
So, something remarkable happened in what was a Democrat environment. It became a Republican environment. And Governor Youngkin said he would have an executive order that would do something with the mask mandates and other things in the schools we can talk about if he got elected. And the first thing he did was come out with an executive order to do exactly that. So he promised it and he did it. Ken, we think this really was the start of a major movement in this country to take back America and make us great again. What do you say?
Well, I think that's exactly right. I mean, for months now, I think people all across the country, concerned parents and concerned citizens, have been looking to Virginia and the parents who were fighting the good fight at school board meetings about progressive curriculum subjects and CRT and transgender ideology, and then, of course, as a part of the pandemic, masking and the really abusive, dangerous, harmful treatment accorded by the school officials in insisting on even the youngest children be masked, be forced to cover their face, even though there is a growing amount of evidence, technical and scientific evidence, that it's ineffective and even harmful to their development and physical and psychological health. And so the parents really got motivated, especially in certain school districts in Northern Virginia. And Governor Youngkin was insightful enough to understand what was at stake, and he made those promises that you referred to, and he was elected, in fact, on a promise to make sure that the state government recognizes, respects, and protects the fundamental, constitutional, natural, God-given rights of parents to have a meaningful say in the education and upbringing of their children. And as a part of that, he promised that they, the parents, would have their right over their children and their welfare to be recognized by letting them, the parents, opt out of any masking program that might be in effect in the schools as a part of the overall response to the pandemic. And he delivered. First day in office, he issued an executive order that rescinded the statewide public, private school, no exception, universal mask mandate that had been issued by his Democrat predecessor, and replaced it with an executive order that, in fact, recognized the fundamental right of parents to decide whether their children would be masked or not. He didn't prohibit masking. Mm-hmm. He just left it up to the parents as it should be, as that should be done.
So Ken, I really think it's like something really happened here that's big, and even much bigger than the masks, right? I mean, when Terry McAuliffe, said that parents really have no place in their children's education.
Yeah, they should. Exactly.
That
was
they didn't
terrible.
have any place. I mean, he was kind of cruising. The Democrats were cruising. They thought they had this thing in the bag. And man, that just sucked all the air out of that campaign. I mean, it was just immediate. It was huge, a turn of events that happened. And it just showed their mindset, this elitist mindset.
Well, it showed a horrible sense of arrogance.
But your kids, but you send them to us to be brainwashed in a way that we feel they should be brainwashed. And the parents of America, even those, left-leaning parents in America, I mean, it was just overwhelming. You said Northern Virginia. I mean, that's really a Democrat stronghold in these areas that really revolted against the Democrat Party. So I think something really huge has been launched here, and we got the midterms coming up. And I got to tell you, Governor Youngkin's playbook is the playbook, I believe, for many, many districts around America, many states around America, and especially those purplish states around America. He's just absolutely struck a chord. What do you say?
Well, he has indeed, and the campaign and the comments by former Governor McAuliffe, as you say, revealed the true nature of the some of the fundamental issues at stake here. I mean, yes, there is a masking issue, and yes, we've had debates about vaccination, and yes, there are a lot of particular serious debates about teaching materials and what's in the school libraries and everything. But really, it all comes down, beyond the masking and the other particulars, what we're seeing, what we're battling through, is really to determine the answer to some very fundamental questions as a country and as a society. That is, certainly, whose children are these? And what rights do parents have to make decisions about the education of their children? Meaningful decisions, meaningful input and participation. And beyond that, where, in fact, do the rights of parents and all our rights, where do rights come from? Do they come from the generosity of the state and the decisions of unelected, unaccountable, supposed experts? Or do our rights come from the hand of God, as stated by the founders in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, the heart and soul, the beating heart of our Republican government experiment in this country? And you know, what is the place of the individual in society? Who is going to have what power, and who's going to make decisions about this policy issue and that policy issue? For years, we've been fighting with the administrative state and the so-called progressives, really regressives, anti-democratic, anti-revolution, counter-revolutionary, counter the American revolutionary regressives on the left, as to what kind of nation we're going to be and what the answer is going to be to these questions.
Well, hang that question right there, because we're going to run out of time because we have a hard break coming up. Can you hang around for a few minutes after the break and continue this conversation?
I'd be delighted.
Well, that'd be great. All right, we're going to be right back with Ken Davis, the former Deputy Attorney General for Virginia, and we're talking about mask mandates, the state of Virginia, the excitement that it generated on election night, and it's continuing to this day, even, Neil, in San Francisco this week. So we're going to be right back with Made in America. Don't go anywhere. Welcome to Made in America. This is Rich Rothman along with Neil Asbury, and we're hosting Ken Davis. He's a former Deputy Attorney General for Virginia. We're talking about mask mandates, and we saw what was happening during the election with the election of Governor Youngkin, who did a remarkable job in the demise for the time being of Terry McAuliffe in that state. And it looks like the Democrats hit a wall and the Republicans didn't. And it seems like it's going forward in other states. It really has become the rallying cry for the moms and pops around this country to say enough is enough. We're taking it back, and we're going to go forward with it. Ken, good to have you back on the show. We're delighted to have you here. So I want to ask this question, and we kind of broach this. And then we have a soundbite we want to play that we can respond to from Mike Rowe. But it seems like this week alone, San Francisco recalled 3 far to the left members of the school board. Right, Neil?
Yeah,
that's what happened.
Yeah. It was an amazing thing, Ken, to see that happen, and I think this is just a groundswell of more to come. But when you see it in a very, very progressive, I mean, you know, with all capital letters, you know, bolded, screaming out at you, San Francisco, the most progressive city in the United States, maybe the most progressive city in the world, recall progressive.
Well, they had good
board
Chinese
members.
food. I don't know what happened.
There's some tectonic shift that's going on in our country. But Rich, as you said, let's listen to Mike Rowe here with this, how he kind of summed it up.
I think Hans Christian Andersen answered the question perfectly many years ago when he wrote a great fable called The Emperor's New Clothes, when the emperor was convinced that his tailors had made him beautiful garments when in fact they hadn't made him anything at all. He was naked. So they all pretended he had these beautiful clothes on until a kid standing in the front row is looking around and he sees the naked emperor and he's like, hey man, that dude's naked. And once he said it, other kids said it, and then some adults said it, and then people began to nod. And then very quickly it became clear that the emperor's new clothes didn't exist. We know it makes no sense to cover a kid's face who's 2 years old or 5 years old or 15 years old so they can go to school. We know it. And yet for 2 years, very few people said anything. Well, now the kids spoke up and people are nodding their heads and we're coming out of our stupor.
Ken, you think that Governor Youngkin's campaign in the election and the success you all had in Virginia really was the kid crying out and saying enough is enough, and guess what? Our eyes are open, and we're going to move forward in the right way with this. What do you think?
I think it was a key moment in the not only the masking battle and the other particular COVID battles such as vaccination and so forth. I think it was a turning point on these at the more fundamental level of families versus the bureaucracy, parents versus the school board, the authoritarian school boards, and who's going to decide, and whether the government is going to be held accountable and forced to be responsive to the people who are under the Constitution. And in our constitutional republic, the people are sovereign. And so the people rule. And yes, there's a role for experts and so forth, but their proper role is to feed information as input into a political system that is dominated by the elected representatives of the people and the people themselves. And we have been fighting against the supposed experts and the unconstitutional administrative state, the regulatory state, for years. And the response of the bureaucracy and the supposed experts, the catastrophic, destructive, incompetent, conflicted response of the supposed experts just piled up so much evidence of how clearly things have gone wrong for everybody. Not just, this is not a conservative versus liberal, Republican versus Democrat kind of issue. This is a state versus the people, including the people and parents and families in San Francisco. I think it is remarkably significant, tremendously significant.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there, Ken. We're just about running out of time. We're on another hard break, but I think you're right. I think this was a very significant moment for America. I think the campaign that your governor manufactured did a remarkable job with, really set the stage and created the template for the success that we're going to have going forward in the midterm elections. Ken Davis, former Deputy Attorney General for Virginia, we're delighted to have had you on Made in America. Don't go anywhere. We have a lot more to talk about. Neil and I have a whole list just for you.
We are so happy that you're here with us today. We've had a lot of fun doing this show. We hope you've enjoyed as much as we've had. We've had some really wonderful guests some great, great conversation, and still more to go. You really want to stay around. This is Neil Asbury together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, we got to talk about it. I mean, this thing is really heating up between the Ukraine and Russia. And, hey, look, democracy, you got to support democracy, what Russia is doing to the Ukraine and all of that. I mean, it just makes your heart bleed. I mean, it's terrible what's going on over there. But what this administration has done, it's made it so much worse because they have totally messed up this economy in such a way that if we do have issues going on in Eastern Europe, we're not as prepared for it as we should be. I mean, look at inflation. Look at, the cost of energy. Look at the cost of everything. Look at regulation. Look at the labor market. Look at the supply chain problems. And now you're going to have a major conflict in Eastern Europe that the United States is going to be part of. Hey, look, we should have been getting this economy going and running because the damage that this could do to the economy because of the mismanagement of the Biden administration to get us to where we are is indefensible. Let's listen to President Biden talk about it this week.
To be clear, if Russia decides to invade, that would also have consequences here at home. But the American people understand that defending democracy and liberty is never without cost.
So, Rich, does that mean that inflation's now at 20% or 25%?
Well,
does it mean that
yeah.
interest rates are back to the Jimmy Carter levels? What does that mean?
Well, I don't even know if he knows what that means, except he knows there are going to be costs. He knows that we have completely imbalanced this economy. It was running smoothly. We had the strongest economy practically in the history of the United States, if not in the history of the United States, certainly modern history. We had the best job market. We had the lowest unemployment across the board in all sectors, whether it was in the middle class, lower class, whether it's in the black sector.
Every demographic
you can think of. More women working than ever before. Everything was humming.
More women creating their own companies
exactly
than ever before.
We had energy under control, and we were a net exporter of energy. So we were self-sufficient. So it didn't matter what happened in the world. We could control our own destiny. And in one day, that was eliminated. The very first day Biden was, inaugurated, he eliminated all of that, which put this down this very, very ugly path.
So now, yeah, that's right. So now,
what is the cost of war, Neil?
So now we go on with this thing, energy. The European allies being cut off from Russian energy, and we could fill that void, but I don't know if we can now.
Well, apparently he doesn't want to do that
without putting undue pressure on the American people.
Yeah.
I don't know. But let's listen to Jerry Howard. He is the CEO of the National Builders Association. This is what he had to say.
The number one problem right now is increased building material costs and the delay in getting them. I've had guys tell me that they're having up to 4 or 5 month delays in getting everything from cabinets, garage doors, appliances, even trusses. So you add the delay factor into the costs, add the inflation that Ashley's talking about in mortgage prices, and then add the regulations that the Biden administration is putting on our industry. I can completely understand why our guys are starting to get a little bit nervous.
So, Rich, our economy should be working at a much higher level. We should be really humming along right now.
100%.
And I can't say, confronting Russia over Ukraine was ever going to be easy, but based on where Biden has us right now, he's made this so much more difficult on the American people.
Well, he also made this happen for Russia. If we think about that, we had leverage against Russia using energy. It was a weapon, but not a weapon. It was a bulletless weapon to control their economy. The only thing Russia had going with their economy, which is an utter failure, was energy. They wanted that pipeline. They wanted to increase energy sales into Europe. They did it with Germany. They did it with the Ukraine. They did it with those other countries in that area. And because of that, it enabled Russia to move forward with strength and without fear of the United States. And Biden created the scenario that allowed Putin to do this. He reinforced him. And not only that, we're giving them billions of dollars a week because we're buying 10% of our fuel from the Northeast from Russia. Does that make any sense, anybody? Because I can't figure that one out.
Well, it doesn't. None of this makes any sense whatsoever. But because we are where we are, we were exporting energy. We had plenty of energy resources. Now we're going into this much weaker, much, much weaker. And don't you think Putin doesn't know that? Well, Rich, unfortunately, we're out of time. But we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.